Okay, welcome. Denture adventure, basic stuff. Don't know number one reason of filming this, but just another day. We have an immediate denture, maybe something new, but straightforward. The client here will be having 1-2 and 1-3 extracted, and we're going to do a wax tooth try-in prior to extraction and completion of the immediate denture to verify aesthetics and CR registration, the bite registration, vertical dimension. In this case, no bite opening here. And what I'm going to do here live, I'll just try to attempt best I can and explain a few things while we're setting up the immediate denture. So I've taken the liberty off screen here to kind of separate my model so the wax is removable. I've marked the midline. You can see it here. And this is probably an interim denture, so we're going to use, from discussion with the client, B1. A little light, but this was the request, and somewhat matching the bleached lower 1x9 with the Kennedy Class 1 bilateral free end RPD. So we can take this bubble out here on the lower. And it looks like these are some semi-anatomical denture teeth here on the bottom, and we're going to attempt to set this up. So I've separated the model. I'm going to seal this down because I don't want it to move while I'm setting up. We didn't use a semi-adjustable articulator. These lower teeth are going to dictate the excursions. We're going to keep the overbite and the overjet to a minimum, and luckily 1-2 and 1-3 are pretty much end-to-end with minimal overbite overjet, which is a good thing. When we go to a full denture, I've seen many immediate dentures try to have a 90% overbite, which is definitely not helping the client with any kind of stability in their complete upper denture prosthetic if we are incorporating 90% overbite, unless they have a condylar inclination of maybe something extreme, like a 50-60 degree condyle, which is really rare. So this is what I see in dentures, and we kind of try to stress the client tries to stress their need for aesthetics, but unfortunately we're trapped with the function of a complete denture. This is a complete denture without any implants. And we have to keep this overbite and overjet to a minimum. And I've chosen the mold. I've chosen the mold off screen here that'll best suit the characteristics and the width and the length of the existing two teeth. I've just got to do some grinding of the denture teeth to get the neck in, to get the correct emergence angle, to kind of match the same emergence angle of the existing. And then I'm going to look at the occlusion here. Okay, we've got some void, but that's not really a big issue because I could get the incisal edge here still. I've got the midline, and you can see here I'm kind of moving this back and forth, that I may do some selective centric occlusal preparation of this denture tooth. You can see the blue mark here I've left. So maybe to facilitate more contact in centric occlusion, it will disclude in protrusive and lateral. There'll be some selective grinding upon the completion of the denture. And then subsequently, we've got some tissue conditioners for this whole area planned post-extraction, a couple of days, probably about a week after. I remember now, I'm looking at the emergence angle of 2 and 3 and then seeing if my 1 is obtuse to that, meaning a little bit excessive. We don't need to increase any more lip support, nor do we want to increase any kind of boldness in the smile line. I'm going to adjust a little bit more. You can see here on the ridge where it's hitting my denture tooth, and I'm going to reduce the ridge lap slightly a little bit more and try to get this denture tooth emerging out of the alveolar bone here. That would make it look a little bit more natural. So again, I've reduced base plate when I made this occlusion rim for the number one reason: I want to maintain the length and the integrity of the prosthetic teeth. So I don't need any base plate in the way. I see this in error with a lot of dental technicians. They leave this base plate here. It's not necessary. I'm going to need this space to create an emergence angle, or at least I have the freedom to if I wish. But when I have a base plate there, I don't want the base plate to dictate my setup at all. It's going to simulate the patient's coverage. Sometimes that helps. I think what's really important is that we've got the base of the model parallel to the plane of occlusion, parallel to the base of the model, parallel to the plane of occlusion. So I don't have my mounting like this, which kind of really throws off my setup. I always have a relationship to the horizontal plane. And this was obviously parallel to the Camper's plane and the, or the allotragus line, if you want to call it that, and or the interpupillary line of the client. Okay, we have a mandibular dentition that kind of dictates a lot of the plane of occlusion, but, you know, this was done, you know, pretty horizontal in the past, it seems. It wasn't, you know, a sagging posterior occlusion or declining away or even conversely lifting up. So when we used a Fox plane, we didn't have much to do because the lower dentition was pretty spot on. I mean, parallel to Camper's plane and the, I'm sorry, I got off screen there, a little allotragus line. So we're going to move on to the next one, and I'll try to be and expedite this. Now, I've taken the midline off the occlusion rim, but I have it marked here on the lower. And in this case, very simple, it does match up with the lower. Many times it doesn't. We've got teeth drifting on the lower with some edentulosum that may have occurred. And again, I have created this occlusion rim with no base plate in the anterior flange. We don't need base plate there. I mean, I was pretty careful. My wax was homogeneous with the base plate. It didn't break off or split or crack or peel. Very straightforward. And then that gives me a lot of freedom now in the setup that I'm not really wasting time adjusting base plates. Like most immediate dentures, we have to manipulate the denture teeth, normally the ridge lap. I'm going to soften the wax. Again, I don't need any firm wax to dictate my location and placement of the central. We don't want a reverse smile line by having this kind of inverted angle. If you wish to do some, let's say, DNA or cultural setup, you could, male, female, Caucasian, Asian, Western European, South American. You could incorporate that. This is pretty straightforward Central Europe. Now, you can see the lower teeth here. We have some angle on this lateral and then crowding of the centrals and a crowding of the other lateral. You can incorporate some crowding if you wish on the upper. Now, this has to be consultation with the client. And again, these denture teeth come all the same labial lingual width. And you can see my contact there. I just want to reduce that slightly so I'll be able to tuck it in and create some less overlap. You can create the illusion of overlap by angling long axes of these prosthetic teeth. Now, the next step is a wax up, so I'm kind of wax up at the same time. I need to keep this clean so I can see how the emergence angle is coming out. And you can see here what I've done, kind of elongated the central. Maybe the midline is spot on. I can look here occlusally to see if I have contact and how much contact and if I have any overjet. Like I said, in this case, I'm going to minimize. I'm going to minimize the overjet and minimize the overbite, but we will have contact in centric occlusion. If this was a full upper against a full lower, obviously I would have maintained overjet. And once I'm happy with my location, I'm going to secure now the two centrals, maintaining the midline, maintaining the emergence angle, and then I'll move over to the lateral. I've never done this case before, but I'm approaching them all the same way. I'm assuming that from my tooth selection, I'm going to end up in a class 1 relationship with this canine, as such over here with the natural canine between 3 and 4. The space of the central brought me to the midline. And sometimes we can't have this. You know, if these have drifted over, we'll leave a diastema here for the try-in and then consult with the client that this diastema is going to be closed upon the immediate completion of the full upper. But this one seems to be pretty, you know, helping us out here. That seems like I have more room now from the ridge, other than the centrals tucking them in. And you can see we've picked some denture teeth with the same character of this here. Now, a very feminine distal incisal edge of the lateral kind of reduced. So we're going to keep the same character. It doesn't have to be symmetrical. Sometimes asymmetry, obviously, is a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Asymmetry, but I may just match it a little bit, and I'll take the distal incisal edge off. It's already a tapering ovoid mold, but I'm just going to increase that a bit more. Maybe obviously a little bit more feminine too. I may tuck it in slightly behind the central. I don't know if this client is right-handed or left-handed, but the majority of people seem to be right-handed. So you can have this right side dominance if you wish to include in your setup. And we'll make the left side a little bit softer. And we'll move on to the canine. After I'm securing now, going backwards a little bit, and got some of the carding wax on the lingual of these teeth. Not a fan of the carding wax, but I've melted it off and blended it in. And during the wax up, I'll be removing any kind of leftover wax. Oof, off the screen again. Apologies. And then maybe we'll fast forward this for viewing simplicity. I haven't even tried the canine, but I just know that just visually I'm going to have to reduce the ridge lap. Kind of going back, adding some slight wax. If you wait to the end and add all your wax at the end after the setup, you run the risk of having too much, let's say too much shrinkage of the wax, depending what kind of setup wax you're using. This is really basic. I think number 2 base plate wax. Now this canine obviously has some wear on the incisal edge, as most people do when they're aging, and we go the lateral excursion, you can see this relationship between the upper 1-3 and the lower 4-3. And maybe we can kind of simulate that on the other side by taking, denture teeth are created for partials and flippers and all kinds of relations. They're made for us to customize if we wish. I mean, they're very youthful, and most of the clients are not at that stage. And here we're creating this type of edge-to-edge relationship. I don't want to have a cuspid-guided disclusion in the posterior. I mean, this would be not advantageous for denture stability. Denture stability is when the patient is chewing or lateral excursions left and right and protrusive, that we try to minimize this kind of denture movement, minimizing denture sores, maximizing stability without compromising on the retention that we're going to achieve from our denture here. Now, probably a decent impression, but probably border mold on the reline. And for the interim denture till we have the soft liner, I think I'm a pretty good estimator of my alginate was done very well. The canine, the corner tooth, is the most important, really, tooth in any kind of smile, dentition. This is the segue between anterior and posterior. You can see the contact I've made on this side. This is the transition now between anterior and posterior, where the posterior, more kind of growth lobes, talking histologically speaking, and the evolution from the anterior to the posterior of the human dentition. This corner tooth seems to be the most important. Framing of the smile. Also giving us a strength appearance or a weakness, whatever we choose to put in. Is it male? Is it female? Small physique, large physique. Right-handed, left-handed. I'm okay with this. Oops. Now, at this point here, I've got the anterior 6 waxed on, or 4 with the 2 natural teeth. I can choose to continue on this side, or I could go back to this side. I'll probably just keep continuing along the right-hand side, only because as a right-handed dental technician, I have a habit of always doing the patient's left side or second quadrant first, being also right eye dominant dental technician. If you were to choose to look this in the mirror, you will have a reverse reflection, which will give you a different perspective. If we are a right eye dominant individual dental technician or left eye, that is a difference in which eye I'm using in to locate these teeth. I'm using my right eye, and it's different if you to use the left. So you have to be cognizant of these things. Now, as you can see, I got a little bit of base plate here, but I'm still going to have the neck emerging from the ridge, as you can see, that I've exposed here. Not a huge fan of this composite denture teeth, but for the interim, that's fine. I've shut down the suction just for the video, but I'm just reducing a slight amount of tooth structure. Keep the ridge lap. Again, I don't want the wax or the base plate to dictate my setup. Straightforward here for the seasoned dental technician, but for possibly the beginner or the first time, this may be of some interest. You can see from the tooth mold selection, I've got my canine, the correct location. I left a little bit of space until I go into excursion with the canine. So a little bit more over jet on the canine. And this here, I'm going to fit in tightly, this bicuspid. And it's sitting in a class 1 relationship and a tooth marginal ridge relationship between 3 and 4. Now, this anatomy of this denture tooth is contrived. I'm going to customize it to maximize interocclusal contact in centric relation in this vertical position. Oh, location. I'm going to leave it slightly high. Just slightly high. And then I'm going to use a little bit of light pressure. Articulating paper without closing. You can see the contact premature on the lingual cusp, which I'm going to flatten out, and the inclined plane of the buccal cusp. Make sure you don't have any bubbles here or voids on your opposing dentition. And then now let's see if this has maximized its location. There you see that movement. I'm going to trim a little bit more. I'm going to hold that maybe about a 0.5 millimeter higher until we get some contact. Then I'm going to remove that contact. I guess you could wax it into place, but I'm trying to, dental technology is a production job. And how can I get to the finish line and expeditiously? Obviously maximizes my production value. And then I'm just going to take a little bit more here. Inclined plane, marginal ridge, lingual cusp, distal lingual cusp of number 2-4. And now this is customized occlusion to maximize contact. And obviously, when the patient is in a lateral excursion, that it doesn't have any premature hypercontacts, which we're going to check all of them later. But I can see here that this is pretty smooth. I may reduce the buccal line angle slightly. For those of you who see my big burr in there, kind of gasping, I think I'm pretty good. You could use whichever you feel like. This happened to be the tapered burr I had in the handpiece, and I don't feel too uncomfortable with something that size. Now, you obviously have to look at the opposing dentition. Do they have 2 bicuspids? Is there diastemas? Is there molar? I think we're going to attempt to get all 4 posterior teeth out here, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Soften the wax. You can use an alcohol torch if you like. Don't want to have any of this wax interfering with my setup. I've kind of reduced the ridge lap. Again, I'm a bit slightly higher in centric occlusion. I'm going to customize this occlusion here against a natural dentition. Obviously, if it was a full upper, full lower, I mean, they're engineered to occlude, but still I always have some custom occlusion depending on the prosthetic denture teeth you're using. Sometimes they have some asymmetrical line angles that need reduction to maximize the efficacy of the occlusion. Meaning conversely balanced occlusion in a full upper lower denture. Lateral excursions, protrusive movements. Some denture teeth, because they're using the denture teeth for multi-purposes, sometimes you might have a buccal cusp lower than the other because it was used for many situations. It's really advantageous sometimes in a partial denture situation, to have this elongated buccal cusp. But sometimes in the full upper, full lower, we can reduce that. Depending, again, on the manufacturer of the denture teeth. I mean, these days, the denture teeth are pretty much full anatomical width. I mean, I think the earlier days would have, Dr. Gysi's philosophy of having a smaller occlusal table, therefore having kind of less tipping motion. Like probably 75% of an occlusal table of a natural tooth. And now we're probably closer to 95. I don't see too many of those. Those are kind of gone by the wayside. It's kind of narrow buccal lingual. It does have some merit, but I think with some good model analysis, good impression taking, right VDO, having the teeth in the neutral zone, we'd be able to minimize, if not eradicate completely, any type of hyperocclusion to have some denture instability. Again, I'm talking about the full upper, full lower, and here the full immediate upper against the natural lower, class 1 partial here. And we've got the denture teeth here, and these look like, to me, a Vita lingual form, or even possibly a Vita MFT. And this is an interterm denture. It'd be kind of nice to go and match these up with the final denture, but due to the B1 shade and the timing of this, we can go with these Yamahachi. It's fine. Slightly narrower occlusal table, but I thought that might be advantageous being first time full denture wear. Oops. First time full denture wear. Here we probably don't have to do too much customization, even though we're doing one denture tooth brand against another, a different occlusal scheme. But I'm pretty confident that this should manage. You can see there's not as much overbite when you have this occlusion together. So I may customize the occlusion to give me more overbite, or just pop out the overjet to close out the buccal corridor. So we don't have the kind of black hole picture there. And let me see what that looks like. Maybe a little bit too excessive here on the buccal corridor. And we don't want to go outside the neutral zone and increase any kind of cheek biting. But the lower teeth, I'll just do a little bit of a customization of these denture teeth to reduce the inclined plane of the buccal slope and kind of widen the occlusal table without making it a 0 degree to kind of maintain the spillways of saliva and food, because this is going to increase, again, the chewing efficacy of the client. And you can see I've closed this up nicely, this space. Even though this number 6, when it was fabricated from a previous laboratory or denturist or technician, it looks a little bit higher than the occlusal plane. But we don't know what was, this was maybe created to fit an existing acrylic partial, and that acrylic partial has probably settled. So then this was lifted up at the same time. I think it would be prudent to create these two prosthetics at the same time and maintain the same shade, control, and engineering of the posterior teeth. But for many reasons, these things are done in a different time, maybe years apart here. And then possibly when the final denture is created, whether that's within a year, if this is an interim full immediate denture for a year, then maybe at that time replace both prosthetics and then better level this posterior occlusion. You can see a slight step between 5 and 6. And then maybe if I reduce the buccal cusp of 5, the buccal cusp tip of 5, then it won't be as drastic. So I can kind of angle that up. I do have overjet on the 5. And then that would make it a little bit more smoother transition between 5 and 6. So we don't have this kind of stepping. And then I reduce the occlusion of number 6 to lower the buccal cusp tips of 6. to kind of give it the illusion that it is the same as 5. Is it perfectly the same? No, but it's a lot closer than if I didn't adjust the buckle cusp tip of 5 and or the occlusion of number 6. We'll go to number 7 here. Soften the wax again. You can kind of see here from experience if you need to reduce the tooth structure. I'm going to take a little bit on the ridge lap. A little bit on the ridge lap. Also increasing, when there's processing time, tooth surface area for bonding to the acrylic denture base. Again, this one is not necessary to reduce too much occlusal surface, if any, at all. But you know what? I will take just a touch to widen the occlusal tip a bit there. And those 2 inclined planes, just a touch. And there we have this whole quadrant now completed. I guess you can check the length of this video, which would be an average time. I'm not rushing, nor am I taking an excessive amount of time. I think this would be, let's say, average. I mean, we don't have to rush everything. We can enjoy the process. Try to do some, due diligence of the job. The length of the video will be start to finish of basically a full upper immediate denture setup, with trimming of each tooth. Everyone tries to speed things up by just sticking them in there. We just don't slap the teeth together. We have to customize these occlusions, customize the excursions. So I'll probably do a little bit more on number 5 at the end. If I can just, it's still soft though. I'm looking here that I've got some premature contact on number 5. You see I've marked here with a blue pencil. Kind of exaggerated the excursion here. Yeah, take a little bit out after I'm done. Let's move over to this side and continue on with, you can see this occlusal height is a little bit higher on the posterior. It's going to be a little challenge. Let's see what it turns out. Like I said, I didn't have the luxury of doing this case before. If we always do every case twice, you always change something, and the second time you go, oh, you know what I should have done? We can always be better, right? You have the experience of doing it. But this is kind of maybe a disadvantage to the dental technician. Every case is the first time. Every case is the first time facing this type of occlusion, this type of tooth mold, this shade, this vertical dimension. And this is maybe what I believe makes the job hard. I've got some light cure here. No, it's okay. That we need to perform to maximum potential each time. Each time. And we don't have the experience other than just basic, principles of occlusion that we apply each time. So I haven't really taken too much time to put this one, but I can see where I'm going to have to customize this occlusion in place here. Now I can mark it, or vicariously I can use my eye, my right eye, and oops. Stubbornly I didn't soften it enough. I'm going to reduce the ridge lap still, but this is just for the occlusion first. And then now I'm going to reduce the ridge lap, and then I'll go back to occlusion, where I'm hitting the ridge. Like I said, we're going to go for try-in. We can do some, luckily we can go for try-in, and we can have some changes if we wish. Now we can see what's going on here. I wish I had the lower partial. I would probably reduce the mesiobuccal line angle of number 4-5 here to kind of better interdigitation, but I'll have to customize upper 4. Still got to reduce mesial buccal side, excuse me, distal buccal pit of number 4 to accommodate this sharp edge of number 5 below. If I wish, I could mark a line here and reduce number 5, almost like a reduction marking. And then during the try-in, I can reduce the existing partial denture at that moment in time. And I'm almost there without maintaining the same buccal overbite in the posterior, just a touch more. And maybe we can accommodate that sharp corner. Get some wax out of the way. Again, emergence angle, do not have this more buccal inclination. Or excuse me, don't have this more buccally in a bodily position outside the line angle for the buccal corridor. This whole line angle corridor is maintained. We've got, I think it's a pretty decent transition from 3 to 4, matching the other 3 to 4. Bit of wax. Most dental technicians work obviously very differently. I've seen some that just keep the whole thing soft. I'm in no rush. I don't have another 20 cases to set up today. A couple of more, but there is no immediate rush. No one's chasing me here to finish. And I want to try to do the best I can do for each one. Number 5 now. Let's see what we'll have to the opposing occlusion. A little bit narrower of the mold between the lower. There's probably a 31, and this is 31 as well, but being slightly different. Okay. You can use a, intraorally I would use a cloth articulating paper. This articulating paper is, you can get a lot of eccentric contacts if you're, you know, squishing that together. So as you can see, I'm using it very lightly so I don't get any kind of erroneous contacts. I mean, I'm not holding, just slight markings here. But intraorally, I'll use the cloth from, to give them a plug, Candelor's intraoral occlusion check. A little bit on the pricey side, but excellent when the, because, you know, here I can control the articulator on the pressure I'm closing down, but the patient can't control vertically when they're biting down how much. So I don't want any kind of eccentric markings or extra curricular occlusal contacts, so to speak. Not the happiest with this one here. Again, this 5 is causing issues on the occlusion of this one, so I've lost my overbite. So I'm going to have to create it from this occlusal table. Number 5, reduce it. Try not to make it look too flat. You can see it's hitting here on the mesial side because I'm slightly a little bit more anterior, which is fine. I don't want to go back over here onto the hemular notch and occlusion. I mean, this is ridiculous to go that far back. It'd be nice, like I said, if we could control upper and lower at the same time. And I'm going to reduce. There we go. Just a touch more. I can use some articulating paper. Reduce this mesial. Prematurely age the denture teeth. But we need to maximize this centric occlusal contact and smooth emergence angles. Smooth emergence angles. Excuse me, smooth lateral excursions, smooth lateral excursions without any eccentric contacts. No hyperocclusion to reduce the stability of this maxillary denture. Will I reduce all of them? I'm hoping, but I know for one thing for sure, I'll be minimizing anything. And I find that is overlooked a lot in some of the cases that come across the lab bench. Wherever around the planet the dentures are made. I mean, here in our community is a very multicultural community, so I'm kind of gifted to see denture work from around the globe. The Far East, the Near East, obviously Europe, popular, and here in our great, beautiful country, Canada. Its vastness, it has also a vastness of delivery treatment modalities I see. So we need to kind of have the morphology going back to the cultural setups of our clients to kind of, we just can't go into the same mode all the time of molds, shades, and arrangements. If we can change the arrangements to best suit the patient, what they look like, if you want to use some cultural stereotypes in your setup, that's fine. I think that's obviously overlooked too. So, you know, the master molds of the denture tooth manufacturers, whether they're American or European, are they including molds? Are we customizing those molds to fit the rest of the planet? Or are they ethnocentric in their manufacturing master mold? I find some of them are, but there's lots there to customize anterior setup, posterior occlusion. Predominantly in the anterior setup, you're going to see these stereotypes. And I've just widened the occlusal table of number 7 and tried to maintain the same overbite over jet from the, I mean, this is our biggest issue, is this number 5, but I think I've accommodated it okay. And adding some wax. Gonna hold it in place and prepare for our wax up. Now this is a wax up for try-in, so the festooning will be pretty basic. And the reason is, if there's any adjustments to be made, the time we spent here excessively on festooning will be all for lost and all gone. If I was going straight to a finish, then I would have my wax up for finish. That doesn't mean we're gonna make a hasty wax up, a sloppy wax up. We're going to maintain the length of the prosthetic teeth as best we can to fit in with the existing dentition. I may leave some customized occlusal excursive movement grinding and maybe some incisal ledge grinding with the client at hand, so they feel that they have some participation. If they choose not to, and they say, oh, whatever you think's best, then I'll take that license in my own hand, so to speak, that creative license. I've already taken a lot of liberties today, but most of the liberties I've taken today are for functional improvements and necessary function excursive adjustments on the denture teeth. Some aesthetic, basic aesthetic, yeah, difficult saying that. Some basic aesthetics, incisal grinding, some customized line angles or buccal slopes, customizing them. If that rubs people the wrong way in their dental technology, I apologize to those individuals, but This is my video. So I'm going to take all the liberties that I feel necessary. You can always put in the comment section if there's something that you see obtuse or would like to add some constructive feedback. Most dental technicians were working in isolation. Nobody sees what everybody else is doing other than the products are done, and then we're trying to piece together the timeline with the patients of what exactly actually happened. You know, what was the dentist doing? What was the patient requesting? What was the timeline? And then we have aged population and aged clients, and sometimes these timelines become misconstrued and exaggerations. So we could always use the 50% rule when listening and saying, okay, if half of what's that is true, then, okay, I've got something to go on. You know, how many times we see the denture and saying, hi, your immediate denture was never relined. And then the client's going to say, well, no one ever told me that. And I'm saying, I highly doubt that. Maybe you just choose to forget that, or you chose not to go back, or you moved, or you just got busy, and then now it's easy to say, no one ever told me that. We're going to take responsibility. Practitioners take responsibility. The patients take responsibility. And here I'm just adding some wax for my wax up. I didn't have to do much. Just smooth out the palate here. Make sure that I don't have any voids. Soften up the wax here all the way around. I think I have enough. And like I said, I'm going to double check here. I'm tight all the way around. This kind of inverted centrals I may leave and do some customized grinding, and then go back up with the distal line angle of 1 and 1. But we also have this kind of angulation of the lower 4-1. So do you want to be symmetrical or asymmetrical to that? I'll leave that for chairside. So we can take this off. Use your favorite wax up tool, whichever you find the easiest. I'm going to do the linguals. I'm going to be careful, the wax is a little bit soft, but it won't stay that way for long. Still winter here, experiencing winter. So, you know, we're on the chillier room size, chillier room temperature. Conversely, in the summer, the humidity levels are higher. I'm going to expose the full lingual anatomy, the centrals, the 2-2, and the canine. Canine I may leave fuller on the lingual because this denture tooth anatomy is a little bit weaker because I've chosen to keep the labial gingival emergence of that canine a little out to kind of frame a little bit better. And I don't have the strength of the lingual to fill in there from the denture tooth manufacturer. Okay, that's close. Now we'll go in the posterior section. Again, I think I would always try to expose the maximum amount of teeth without exposing, obviously, the ridge lap of the tooth. Maintaining the length is important here to give it a natural appearance. Maintaining the length also facilitates this length maintaining in the processing. Now, these denture teeth better adhere to the drawing of the top half of whatever processing technique you use, whether it's injection or a split flask. Now, this is just my first run through of exposing the denture teeth, but I didn't put too much wax on the teeth, but I did have enough that to remove. I'll reduce the flange slightly there. Take some excess off. And I'll get back to that in a bit. That's a good start. And I'm right-handed, so I'm always going right to left. I'm not going left to right. You want to start at the central, you go ahead. You want to start at the 7, you go ahead. Wherever you wish. But I'm not taking it in one fell swoop. I don't want any peeling of this wax. I think that's a good preliminary start. I'll go back and I'll take off what I've removed. And then I'm going to refine that a second, a third, a fourth time to get to the right length. This is a little bit premature on the length. Yeah, so we went from a setup video. What an adventure that was. I thought it was pretty straightforward. And then now we're on a wax up. We'll do the whole thing. And again, I guess I've never, I'm going to assume it's going to be an hour. Whatever the video, where we're at. Yeah. Upper and lower, wax up, hour and a half. Full upper, hour. To trim a lot of teeth in the immediate denture. Let's take this wax out of the guide plane so this will draw better, and then reduce the gingival margin here into the natural tooth. We have gingival, we don't have gingiva all the way to the incisal edge. So I'm taking this interproximal papilla, reducing the height of it to give it a more natural appearance. This is obviously an individual thing between you and your customers and clients and your own ability to mimic nature. Obviously, you're limited by some of the denture teeth, depending on the size of the denture teeth and the shape of the denture teeth and how much you've trimmed of the denture teeth. If you can maintain some natural, obviously we don't want any wax on the teeth, so I'm taking some wax off the teeth, and at the end I'll probably go over it with a touch of wax solvent. And then I'm going to go over here, reduce a little bit more. So now I'm just getting the length of the teeth, and then I can go in here and reduce the width of the flange and maybe shape some festooning, stronger canine. I've got some frenums here to deal with after I take it off. You want to leave a little incisive papilla, you can. Again, this is a really basic wax up because like I said, if there's any changes, this will all be for naught. You take a little brush, take a little bit of the leftover wax off. Got some definition. Looking at the length of the gingival margins. I'm going to go back with an alcohol torch and maybe smooth out some of your festooning without, ruining the gingival margins, please. We'll keep some basic anatomical structures. Oh, beautiful. I'm going to go and shape the flanges. Also keeping the idea of how much lip support. So these flanges theoretically are replacing the amount of bone that was lost. We're not going to go and do a big Botox support job here, but you can, if you start to over-exaggerate the neutral zone with the denture base, and again, you're creating instability. We don't want to overextend onto the detached mucosa, nor do we want to extend into the orbicularis oris here, and then they're creating instability when the patient goes through some facial expressions. There is a neutral zone, and we've got to stay in it. Now, whether that satisfies the patient's aesthetics, that neutral zone, that's based on the consultation now. There is limitations. And so many times I've seen some practitioners, they just go beyond the limitations to satisfy what the client needs, but sometimes the client's expectations have to be adjusted with the abilities or the limits of the prosthetic. There is limitations. That's not an excuse to say we stop short all the time. There's limitations. And the expectations of the patient have to be managed. The success of this appliance here, regardless of the technical success, I'm hoping will be spot on. But even with the technical success, if we don't have any consultation success, manage the expectations of the client. Keep them informed of what's going to happen to them, what their expectations should be during insertion, after surgery, and subsequently the weeks to follow and the months to follow. The grand picture of things, then this is where I think a lot of the practitioners falls short. Including myself now and then in the past. It's happened. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on those natural teeth. Make sure they stay where they need to stay. Just take some wax out of this position. And a little wax solvent to get the wax off the teeth so we can kind of improve some refraction at the triad of light. The denture teeth do a lot of science for us, depending on the quality of it, to increase the refraction, to give it this natural depth, color, maintain the right values of the teeth so light doesn't come off flat. The wax is going to limit that if we don't get it off. Naturally, I mechanically removed the wax first as much as I could, which I thought. What else we have here? We could go a fine detail interproximally, whichever small carver you wish, just to make sure there's no wax up here on the incisal edge, and then reestablish these incisal embrasures, buccal embrasures, to give it that natural appearance. We start filling these embrasures with wax and acrylic, we kind of lose the natural appearance that we're trying to maintain. And if you want to go under a magnification, we could do that. Especially with someone with aging eyes as my own. I can go in here and clean up any wax that I may have, or I can redefine some of these marginal ridges. Redefine some of the gingival margins, marginal ridges. as I was going through with the first carver, I just did one fell swoop. And here we can get a little bit more detailed. Probably something I would reserve more for the final wax up. But while we're here, it was hard to leave it alone. It was hard to leave it alone. A little bit of alcohol torch just at the edge here. Smooth that off. And naturally, before trying, we'll go back and double check if we've missed something. There's always, just like anything, it could always be better. Start spending more time, but like I said, I'll reserve some of the fine wax up around the lingual gingival margins for the wax up for finish. Since this is going to go for trying, we may make some changes. This is important, this transition here. But we're going to have to add these two teeth. We're going to have to add these two teeth anyways. Oops. You can see there's no editing here. Now, there we have a immediate denture transitional. It's going to be for trying. And we're going to double check at the try-in the excursions to make sure there's no eccentric contacts. Some aesthetic consultation with the client and some consultation on expectations of the client during surgery, after surgery of these two teeth, and expectations of now a full denture prosthetic versus the partial denture prosthetic they had. And I think it's going to be straightforward. So I hope you enjoyed that. Until next time.